Rob, are you there? No? Looks like I'm here first. Welcome to the Property Podcast. I'm Rob B with Rob D, and this week we're looking at having a winning mindset.
Nothing if not competitive. Yeah, welcome to the Property Podcast, episode 190, sneaking up on 200, aren't we? And happy Meetup Day as well, first Thursday of the month, so it must be meetups. And hopefully you're going to meet lots of positive, successful people. And just to give you an extra little boost, we're talking about mindset today. So should be a really interesting discussion. We've also got a futuristic resource of the week and a news story that I can't comment on. But first, yes, tonight is meetups. There's more than 30 going on across the country and beyond. If you haven't got along yet, you've been thinking about it, but every month there's some reason why you can't make it. Break that pattern tonight. It's nearly the end of the year. We've only got a couple more this year, so make sure you get along to your local meetup. To find out where they are and to book your free place, all you need to do is go to thepropertyhub.net/meetups and we'll sort you out from there. And you might just bump into one of us. Where are you going to be tonight, Rob?
I will be at the Stratford meetup. That's Stratford, London. And it's a launch night. First one. Really excited. Great thing about Stratford is super simple to get to wherever you are in London because it's got great transport links and it's close to the station. So make sure you get along if you're in the London area. It's going to be really good. Obviously, support our new meetup that's launched in London. London ones are very, very popular. I'll be there, but don't let that put you off. It should be a great evening. And Rob, where are you off to? Scotland? Wales?
I'm playing my cards close to my chest. Not because of stalkers, I hope. Just because I'm not quite sure yet. So you might bump into me. So again, this could be an off-putting factor. Whichever meetup you go to, you're not quite safe because I might just be there. But I'm quite jealous. I fancied the Stratford meetup. That should be a really, really good one.
Well, you got the Waterloo launch last month, so I thought it was only fair I get a launch event.
Yep, that is only fair. So, well, whichever one you go along to, it's bound to be a winner. So thepropertyhub.net/meetups is the place to go for that. Next up, we've got our news story. And for reasons that will become clear when we get into our topic of the week, I can't tell you anything about this. So, Rob, can you share our news story this week?
Yeah, sure. Unless you can't see it, it's Rob Dick's expose shocker. Rob, no, it's not really. Not quite as exciting. But actually still fairly exciting. It's a buy-to-let income map from the Daily Mail website. So I love an interactive map, Rob. I know you do, so this must be hard for you not to see. So it's a map showing you all the areas across the country and what yield they're delivering. So different hotspots. So if it's particularly poor or if it's particularly strong. And quite usefully, they've produced a top 10 location report for you. So you don't have to scroll across all the map to find out where the juicy areas are. So these aren't the cities specifically, but postcodes within these cities. But the top 10 locations for rental yield include Leeds, Bradford, York's in there. And that's a central postcode for York as well, so that's quite interesting. Preston, Middlesbrough, Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield, Huddersfield and Cardiff. No massive shocks there, I don't feel. But I know a lot of our listeners on the Property Podcast invest in those areas. Bottom 10, don't think it's going to come as a shock, Rob. Bromley, London, Northwood, Birmingham, London, Reading, London, Poole, London, Poole. So they're not Poole in particular is not known for its buy-to-let market. And look, central London, let's face it, you've got to be pretty brave or just don't like income if you invest there too.
Well, you won't hear me falling off my chair in surprise at that one. Although I am from Northwood, so I'm glad that made the bottom 10. And it's a good example of why you shouldn't automatically invest close to home, because if I had done that, I wouldn't be getting a very good yield at all.
No, that's right. I think it's also worth bearing in mind, though, a high yield doesn't necessarily mean a good investment, because some of those areas might be a bit sketchy. Remember, it's not the city as a whole, it's postcodes within those cities. So don't necessarily rush to those areas. Do your research to make sure that the fundamentals that we talk about so often are there as well. But if you get a good yield and with the fundamentals, we've talked about that being a recipe for success in property investment because it often shows that the market is undervalued. So go to the show notes this week, which you can find at thepropertyhub.net/winning. Check out the chart and have a look for yourself. And Rob, as the show notes say, this week we are talking about winning or a winning mindset.
Yeah, we are. Because This is a topic where you'll look at it and go, what's this got to do with property? But there's lots of different components to success in property. So picking the right area is one of those. Actually knowing technically what you need to do is another. Negotiating is another. There's absolutely loads. But it's all for nothing if you don't have the right mindset. There's lots of people who do really, really well in property. There are others who don't. And the difference between them, sometimes it's their knowledge, sometimes it's a skill in a particular area, but more often than not, it's just the way that they approach things. So we've talked a lot recently in recent episodes about sort of particular nitty-gritty kind of things that you need to do, things that you need to know. But it's important to combine that with the right mindset. This isn't the kind of episode like it is when we're talking about how to prepare a property to let out or something like that. We can sit down and go, right, here's the things you do. You do these 5 things in this order and you're done and everything will be fine. You can't really do that with mindset. So we can't tell you, right, you need to believe these 5 things and everything will be fine. But what we can do is have a little bit of a discussion and talk about some things that we consider that have worked for us, what we think are some areas to focus on. And more importantly, even if you don't take anything away from that, we're just going to try and sell you on the value of considering this, because then you can go away and find people whose ideas on it resonate more than ours do, and you can find your own ways of working on mindset. So this is going to be more of a discussion than a how-to. Could be a really interesting one. Hopefully will, but we'll enjoy it at least. But let's be positive and say it's going to be the best episode ever.
I like that, Rob. I do. It's interesting. Because mindset, we talk about can be the difference to your success, but it can also be the difference to your happiness. A few weeks ago, I was giving a training session to the team on positive communication, very much related to this. And I'm sure some of the discussion points are going to come up in this session. But that morning, I was trying to think of an opening story to lead in with the session. And I got my taxi to the train station, as I do every morning. And I sat in the car. And I live in a semi-rural area, so we're going past fields. The sky was coming up. It looked a little bit moody, but it was really beautiful. It was gorgeous. So I was really just taking it in, appreciating the day, thinking about the training session. And the taxi driver decided to open a conversation. And his opening line was, "It's bloody grim out there, isn't it?" And I thought, wow. 1, thank you, because now I've got my opening story. But 2, the more important part of it is the story itself. Is we were both looking at the same things. I thought it was really beautiful morning and interesting scenery, and he thought it was miserable. 2 people, same environment, 2 very different outlooks on the same situation. And that is really the key to all of this. It's we all get given similar scenarios. Sometimes not great, sometimes wonderful, but it's what we do with those scenarios that makes the difference. Because you can go, well, yes, well, it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. When it's not, it's not. Actually, no. There's so many people who are in what other people see as wonderful scenarios who either think, oh, this won't last, or oh, it's not as good as it could be. They'll still find a way not to see the best in a situation. So, like Rob said, you can say, well, how does this relate to property? But in some ways, it's got absolutely nothing to do with property. But in some ways, if you want to be successful, it's got absolutely everything to do with property.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was saying, the mindset component is often the differentiating factor rather than skill level or knowledge or anything else. Before we started, Rob, you were talking about athletes, which I think is a really powerful example of that.
It is. I love the Olympics. I'm like nuts about the Olympics. I don't wish my life away between the 4 years, but I'm just like one of those people who are obsessed with the Olympics. Absolutely love it. And one of the things that I've kind of observed over the years, every time it's on, and something that really fascinates me, is the difference between the top performers in Olympics can be fractions, between the person who's 1st and 7th, whatever discipline, the smallest minute details. And really, is the difference that they're fractionally more talented? Or is it more likely they have a better belief or winning mentality? And I think it's probably, in not all cases, but many of them, the latter. It's their mentality. I also think there's people watching the Olympics at home who have just as much talent as those athletes, but didn't have the mindset or the drive to be there. So they weren't. Those athletes, those performers, those people who've got to the top of their discipline, the fact they're in the Olympics at all says to me they're winners. There's hundreds and thousands and hundreds, millions of people who do all these disciplines. But it's those people there have a stronger, the vast majority, at least anyway, have the stronger mental discipline, the belief system that they are winners, they are the elite of the elite, they are the best, and that's why they're up there. And I really, really enjoy that part of the Olympics because everyone who's there in my mind is an absolute winner. I have the utmost respect for anybody who makes the Olympics, whether they're first or fourth, because I believe there's many people just as talented as them who aren't there, and I think the only difference can be is mindset.
Yeah, and that's such a great example because you can quantify it so precisely. You can see who comes first, second, and third, even if it's by fractions of a second. I think the same applies in loads of other domains. It just happens that with athletics, you can quantify it more easily. But the same goes for anything, and the same goes for business. So I think in business, I do believe that you get some people, a few people who've got a real natural flair for business. And of course, you've got some people who start out with big natural advantages, like maybe they were given a big pile of money to start with, although you could argue that's actually a disadvantage in some circumstances. But for the majority of people, I think the people who've achieved great things in business are the ones who've really gone for it and had the right attitude. The people who've made it to the top aren't the ones who've had everything go 100% in their favor and never had any challenges. If you ever listen to successful business people being interviewed, they never go, yes, it's been brilliant, really. Everything's just gone completely smoothly for decades. There's always been huge challenges. But the thing is, the people who made it to the top are the ones who've overcome those challenges. And also the people who've actually taken those challenges on and not given up before they've started. So I said that I believe there are a few people who've got a real flair for business. But then there are probably even more people who've got a flair for business who, despite that, never find out that they've got it because they never try, because they get deterred with the first barrier that they hit, or because people tell them they can't do it. And so they never actually find out. But I think the differentiating factor in most places is just the ability to keep on encountering challenges and overcoming them again and again and again, and having a big enough idea and a big enough goal to chase that propels you to do that. And that is really 100% mindset.
It is, because, like you said, Rob, athletes in the majority of disciplines have a extraordinary talent, and then they add the mindset to get to the very, very top. But business people, yes, some people have talent, but most of us, and I think we can be testament to this, are just very average, normal people who, are getting involved because they love it, and hopefully, and I do believe, have winning mindsets. So there's no real talent here for the majority of business owners, but it's that belief system that really separates the ones that crack on and do the best to those who struggle. And yes, sometimes there may be some really talented people with a great mindset that fail at business, but then they get back on the horse and go again and eventually succeed. So I think it's huge in business. And I also believe that in property as well. So many people will start property investment and the first niggle fall apart. Oh my God, it's awful. I only expected rainbows, unicorns, and lots of pretty flowers along my journey. No. Property investment, and we've got a podcast on this, has its challenges. It's not always perfect, but it's worth doing because the rewards and results are so good if you do it correctly. But you've got to have the right mindset. Okay, you might not have to have an Olympian mindset or a Richard Branson mindset, but you certainly need to have a positive one that's open to dealing with challenges and situations. Otherwise, you're going to find it very, very hard to succeed. And this very much comes to a belief system. And I think the word belief is important because I think this is the first major takeaway or the major lesson here, is that you can say, oh, I'm going to win. But in your tone, if you don't sound like you're going to win, means probably internally you don't sound like you're going to win. So you don't believe it. I think belief is absolutely key to winning mindset. You can talk a good game, and there are advantages to that, and which we'll come to. But actually, eventually, you have to truly believe it in your inner core that you're going to succeed and win. I can tell you, without doubt, I'm going to win. I believe it. And I've believed it since school. I had somebody I've been friends with for a long, long time. He goes, Rob, you've just believed that you're going to win non-stop since I've known you. Not just that you say it, but actually believe it. Now, I can tell you, I've not won in everything I've done. Far from it. I played football my entire life. I absolutely love football, but I am low average at best. So just because I believed I was going to be good at football, I wasn't, unfortunately. However, I did get into the school team, and don't think that was anything to do with talent. I just think that was desire and belief. And I truly believe that see the word belief, but I truly believe that my belief system has allowed me to do the things I've done. And you might say, well, Rob, you haven't done anything yet, and that's fair enough. But I'm very happy with where I am and feel very happy about where I'm going. And it's the belief system, I believe, is the only thing different, because I'm bang average at a lot of things and actually below average on many too. I think the only thing that I can see when I self-analyse, and I think the only thing I can see different is possibly a belief system. Rob, I know this is something we've talked about offline. These are one of our sort of fireside chats, even though we don't sit next to fires, coffee room chats about belief systems. But I'd be interested to hear, more about your beliefs, your belief system, and how you've worked at that over the years.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. And the challenge for an episode like this is, well, okay, but how do you do that? You've always had that. You've always had this winning belief. But how do you cultivate that if you don't already have it? Something that I've got going for me, and there's a lot where I don't, is that I generally up for trying anything. I'll sort of see the opportunity in things and give it a try. And the thought of it not working out doesn't really bother me, because I've always thought, well, give it a try. If it works, brilliant. If not, then in roughly the same position. And I'd far rather fail than not try at all. And so that's kind of manifested in quitting jobs and moving countries and doing all these things that other people would think of as being really risky and be too scared to do. But it wasn't like it was hard to do, because I was just kind of naturally inclined to kind of see the upside and go, well, it'll be fun to try. Let's see how it goes. But how do you cultivate attributes like that if you don't naturally have it? That's what we're going to try and do in this episode, I think, get into some specific things to look at that might be the key. But like I said earlier, probably the first step is to recognize, go right back to the start, that you can get two different people looking at the exact same situation and perceiving it in completely different ways. And there are things that you can do to control that. You'll have a mindset that just kind of happens naturally as a result of your combined biology, experiences, influences. That just kind of happens. And maybe it's a good mindset, and maybe it's a helpful mindset and you're lucky, or maybe it's not and you go through life in a less than optimal way. But rather than just accepting what you're given, there are specific things that you can do to influence it. So like your taxi driver, Rob, or like two people who'll look at some kind of technical advance, and one will be really scared about how it's going to affect them, and one will go and create a multi-billion pound business around it. You can put yourself in a position where you can see life in a helpful way, and finding ways to do that is probably the biggest advantage you can give yourself.
I agree, and I couldn't use this example till this far into the podcast, but there's probably been some people who've turned this podcast off and gone, well, that's a load of BS. And those people have lost. If you're still listening to this and have a desire to improve your mindset, or really believe it and already have it, then you're going to beat those people every single time in your journey, wherever you do in life, property or regardless. Because if people are closed-minded, as you said, Rob, to opportunities, different ways of thinking, they'll always lose. They might win in the short term occasionally, but over the long term, they've lost. And that's the difference. Same situation, same podcast. Some of you are listening, engaged, wanting to learn more, open-minded to different things, and some have turned off because they've gone, all right, give me a tactic on HMOs. Those people won't win. They might do okay, but they're not going to win. And that's the difference. It's the mindset. It's approaching the same situation and being open-minded, willing to learn and improve, or just thinking this is not for me, it's a load of crap. So for you wonderful people, which I'm sure are the vast majority of you, hopefully anyway, what can you do? What can you do to improve things? Now, as Rob said at the very beginning of the podcast, there's not like 5 quick tips you can do and suddenly you're a winner, in mindset terms at least anyway. But there are things and behaviours you can adapt to certainly improve things. And I think the first one is decide on your communication. I talked earlier that I held a training session for the team on communication. This is something I'm very passionate about. You'll notice that Rob and I use certain words. So, for example, and it's not forced, but in this episode, I've heard Rob, and I'm sure I've said it myself, the word challenges a few times. So we see things not as problems, not as disasters, but challenges to overcome. Very much a business mentality way of thinking. You're constantly dealing with challenges, and how can you overcome them and get to your goals? That's what people with winning mindsets do. They see their end goal and they see these challenges as hurdles to get there, because it's never going to be the straightforward path. So I think that's definitely something to be aware of. And talking of aware, self-awareness, Rob, easy to say you should have self-awareness, harder to achieve, but definitely a powerful tool if you can build on it and work on it.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it's always hard to talk about this because you're talking about it as if everyone else is having problems with self-awareness, although clearly we all are as well. It's very easy to spot someone else's flaws, and it's very difficult to spot your own. But the majority of people who are seeing life through a negative lens or are sort of finding the problem in every opportunity, they don't realize they're doing it. I wouldn't have thought. And so it's just having the self-awareness to realize what you need to be working on and where you can improve. And that is something that definitely needs to be cultivated. I think it gets easier. I feel like over the years, I've got better at catching myself doing things. And I guess maybe it just comes from experience, but it also comes from working at it and being aware of the importance of it. And one of my pet peeves in life is kind of people who'll be like, well, that's just how I am. Take it or leave it. So, I'm just a late person. That's how I am. If you don't like how angry I am, well, then you'll just have to deal with it. And I don't think that's helpful at all because, well, okay, at least step one, they've spotted a certain trait, but they don't have the awareness, perhaps the belief that there's something that they can do about it. And if you combine those two things, you can catch yourself doing something that is suboptimal and you can believe that there's something you can do about it and work on it, then that's a really powerful thing.
Another powerful thing or something you can do is avoid negative people. I avoid them like the plague. I'm allergic to negative people. I do everything in my power, and I've done this with not immediate family members. Just remove them from my life. It sounds hardcore, doesn't it? Don't get me wrong. It's not like I've put them in a cell in a box somewhere or something like that. I just go to social encounters with them when I have to. But negative people, oh, wow. Okay. So I'm not going to be negative about negative people, but I believe that avoiding them in the first place, if possible, is very, very powerful. But there's not just negative people, Rob. There's negative influences such as the media. And this links back to our news story.
Yeah, and this explains why I couldn't comment on the news story earlier, because the news story for this week came from the Daily Mail. I clicked on the link and my browser came up with a warning telling me that I couldn't look at the Daily Mail because I've blocked myself from it. I installed a browser extension that blocks me from certain sites. And the reason for that is that they are not helpful. So this year, with various things like Brexit and the American election and stuff like that, I've got really interested in them. So I like to read about them. But, and this is where self-awareness comes in again, I kind of realized that I don't think I've been quite as productive or maybe even quite as upbeat as I was prior to getting interested in all this stuff. So although I was reading it and I was finding it very interesting, it was like sort of, I don't know, mental junk food. It was like a soap opera or something like that. I was taking in this information, but it wasn't making me feel happier. I wasn't going to do anything with it. And possibly because most news is negative, because that is what sells, it's just not going to put you in the best mindset. So I decided to kind of take willpower out of the equation and just block myself from certain websites. And clearly it's worked, because I'd completely forgotten that I'd blocked myself from the Daily Mail until I clicked on that link earlier. So the habit must have been broken. But I think that's a good example. We are surrounded by all different kinds of influences, and negative influences and negative patterns of thinking can become a bit of a habit. And so by just doing that one simple thing, I was able to break that habit, and now it's not an issue anymore. But given a chance, there's plenty of negativity that people and the media will try to shove your way because it sounds more dramatic. People are hardwired to kind of go for fear and to need to concentrate on negative things so they can run away from them. And also because it's easier and often more satisfying to complain than it is to do something good and do something about it.
Exactly. And what's the opposite? Well, finding people that are upbeat and positive about life and what they're going to do. Mix with those people. They're the people who focus on what's good. That's what you should do too. But focus on what's good. You will enjoy your social circle a lot more, if nothing else. But focus on what's good is really important because I actually think, part of this winning, I think there's definitely tones of, not secret, but key to happiness as well. And if you're happy, then I think you're going to be more likely to be successful. And one of the things I know I've found incredibly powerful is just practicing gratitude. I don't have a ritual. I know some people talk about having rituals of doing things, but just every now and again, just focus on 3 to 5 things I'm really, really grateful for. And that act alone does a couple of things. Often, if I've been a bit negative, and yes, I'm not a superhuman, it can happen, a bit negative or a bit down, maybe I'm tired or I've had many, many challenges that day. If I just focus on a few things that I'm grateful for, I suddenly switch. I find it's almost a switch that suddenly takes me from wherever I was into a much, much better place. Rob, have you practiced gratitude? Is this something you've done? I like this because we didn't talk about before the podcast. Is this something you do on and off? Is this something you've never done? I know you've probably read about it.
Yeah, it had always been one of those things that I'd read about but not really done anything with. And I'm going to sound like such a bloody hippie at this point, but I do actually do 10 minutes of gratitude meditation every day. I don't know if you as a bloke from Liverpool can say that. Me as a softy southerner, I can probably just about get away with it. But I've been sort of meditating on and off for a long time and been trying to get back into it. So I think for the last 50 days or so, I've done it every day. I've been using an app, of course, to track my progress and make sure I keep doing it. But I was kind of struggling with pure mindfulness and looking for different types of meditation, and gratitude meditation, which is basically where you just kind of sit there and focus on positive things and what you're grateful for. It really is that simple. I found it really worked. I was getting more benefit from that than I was from any other type. And it was like an enjoyable session, but then it also carried across to the rest of the day. So it's funny that we hadn't talked about it before, because it has been something that just in the last month or so I've started doing, and it's made an enormous difference. That's
super cool. And what we'll do is we've got a resource at the end for you, but we've mentioned a few different things. Rob's mentioned a meditation app and also a website blocker. We'll put those in the show notes as well. And I think meditation it is one, just to touch on and expand on further. Rob, I think it's awesome that you're back into it. I know you've dabbled with it before. I think that's where I'm at. I think I'm a bit beyond dabbling, but I just use it when I need it. But I've got about 3 or 4 meditation apps on my phone, and I found one particular one that I like. I'll link to it in the show notes as well. And every time I need it, it's just a 7-minute meditation, and I find it just clears the decks mentally. Super useful. Again, I don't want to go too far off topic, but meditation, practicing gratitude, what it will do is allow you to set the foundations to build on top a winning mentality. And the way to do that, if you're not this way inclined already, or you're not built this way, and you're thinking, oh, what can I do? And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but start acting positive, start acting like a winner, start acting the beliefs. Because if you keep forcing yourself to act that way, then you will become that way. It's like Rob and I were having our photo taken the other day, and Rob said, I've done so much smiling that I've become really happy. Because if you keep acting one way and keep saying, I'm happy, and force it and go out and be really happy for the day in front of everybody and everything you do, suddenly it doesn't become an act anymore. Now, this may sound a little wacky to some people, but I promise you, if you start acting like a winner, start acting like things are going to go your way, eventually you'll internalize that and it will become you as a person. It's not going to happen in a week. I don't know how long it'll take for every person. It's probably going to be different depending on how far the other way you currently are. But act to become, it's talked about and documented a lot. It's not a new theory that we've come up with today, but it's definitely one that works.
It is. And so much of it is just habitual. But being negative is largely a habit, and that habit can be broken. And being positive and being happy can become a habit as well. And when you do, that's when you'll start to spot opportunities, because they're always there. But just like 2 people looking at exactly the same thing in different ways, one person will see that opportunity, whether it's a new business or whether it's a particular property where you can see a certain angle on something that everyone else has missed, or just something really small. You'll start to see these things, and it's impossible to say the mechanism by which they happen, but it really does happen. And also, as a happy side effect, you'll be a very popular person to be around. people who are positive and upbeat and happy are really great company. And if you're like that, then you'll always be sought out after. I hired someone from a pool of very qualified, equally qualified applicants just because she was a really happy person. And that was somebody who I wanted to be around. And you just find yourself naturally gravitating towards people like that. So if you are naturally like that, then lucky you. But if you're not, then that's no excuse. It's something that you can work on. And even if in our ramble you haven't really found anything that particularly actionable that you can do something with, hopefully you have. There's quite a lot in there, so might be something that you can take and work with. But even if not, just take the idea that this is something that's worth thinking about. Even if that's all you take from this episode, then that's not half an hour wasted.
And if you want to take this further, then you should probably start reading some books and considering video courses or maybe even physical, attending courses to develop this. It could be the greatest tool that you ever develop. So books like The Magic of Thinking Big, again, we'll link to it in the show notes. We talked about that book a lot in the past. I've got hundreds of books on my bookshelf. I'm an avid learner. I absolutely love to learn. But one of the sections I've got on there, I've got about, maybe 10 books related to mindset and happiness and how it all works. I find it really, really fascinating because I wanted to understand it so I could unpick it so we could do things like this. So rather than say, on iLucky, I wanted to understand it. So, learning about these things and developing this skill set further can only be a good thing. And it could be possibly the greatest investment you ever make. So we're talking about property investment and finding the best ever deal, but actually, by developing a winning mindset, it may actually end up being the best investment that you ever make. So consider it.
Oh, well, I'm feeling really positive and upbeat after that discussion.
I did, really in a positive, chirpy mood, and I hope that's come across. We've clearly enjoyed this episode. If you've liked this episode, let us know. Go to thepropertyhub.net. Every single week we open a discussion board on the forum about each podcast that we do, and this one's no different, so episode 190. Go there now. It'll be there live already. And let us know what you think. Leave a comment. Let us know. Take advantage of the resources that we mentioned. They'll be in the show notes, which are at thepropertyhub.net/winning. Go to the forum. Give us some feedback. Did you enjoy it? Great. If you didn't, don't worry. I'll just think you're negative, and I'll move on to the next comment.
Well, we talked about lots of great tips there, but there's one that we neglected to mention. One surefire way to become a winner in life is to leave us an iTunes review.
It certainly is, and this one comes in from Rose, and thank you so much, Rose. It says, it has to be 5-star. I came to know about this podcast in a February meetup in London. I couldn't believe how much I'd been missing. I've been hooked ever since and treat myself to a daily lunchtime walk with the Property Podcast. I haven't listened to the whole back catalogue yet, but my favourites so far have been Newbie to Property Investment, the series on goal setting, and tips on letting a property out. I like that the podcasts cover wider issues than property, e.g. the pension crisis and tips on using time effectively, plus the handy tools. Rob and Rob, thanks for putting together such a great podcast so early in the morning each week. Thank you, Rose. Thank you so much. That is a lovely review and quite timely, and we didn't do this deliberately, that you like some of the alternative podcasts we do as well on different subjects. So thank you.
Yeah, very grateful for your review. And if you haven't left us a review yet, come on, just go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast and follow the prompts there. Or if you're using an iPhone, you can do it on your app really easily. It'll make us very happy indeed, even happier than we already are.
So this week's Resource of the Week, we've given you loads already, and I think it's definitely going to be one that you need to get to the show notes for. This one, I'm going to admit, it's not something you can use right now. Unless you're listening in New York, then please crack on. But it's just so cool and got me really excited about the future of technology. I had to put it in here. And Rob, I linked to the press release, which we'll link to in the show notes. And within that press release of this app launching, there's a video launching this app, which is really, really popular. And as we described it before we went live, it's kind of an Uber for crime.
Yeah, it's really quite hard to describe, but it's worth going and watching the video, which is more like a movie trailer, but it looks super cool. Basically, it's using technology to give real-time information on crime, and so you as a citizen can be aware of it and either avoid it or go and be a vigilante and intervene. It all sounds a bit nuts, and the video looks super futuristic, but it's really cool that it looks really futuristic, but actually it's here now, and we're just going to see more like this. So to tie into the theme of the episode, It's sort of seeing a real opportunity and a positive use for technology to counter something negative.
Check it out. Well worth watching the video. Very powerful, very impressive, and a glimpse possibly into the future. Whether it takes off now, I do think there's going to be some version of it within the next decade. So really, really interesting. Definitely check that one out. So before we go, let me tell you about a couple of things. First up, our episode next week, which is how to run a successful letting agency. Now, this isn't going to be about Rob and I patting ourselves on the back about running one. No, quite the opposite. If you've ever wanted to set one up, then you're going to love it because we're going to tell you exactly what to do. But more importantly, and I think this is going to appeal to more people, if you want to manage your own portfolio, you can take away tips and things that have worked really well for us and adapt them to your own portfolio and managing it yourself. So again, we're going to draw back the curtain of how things work behind the scenes and let you see how everything works, what hasn't worked as well, and learn from it. So I think it's going to be a super valuable episode. And you know what else is super valuable, Rob? Something's going on tonight.
Yeah, of course. Don't forget it is meetup night. So wherever you are in the country, there should be one near you. There might even be more than one near you. So go to at least one, maybe go to two, go nuts. Go along to a meetup tonight, thepropertyhub.net/meetups. It's completely free. You won't get sold to. There'll be lots of wonderful people there. There might be one of us there, but don't let that put you off. It's going to be a great night. So if you're a regular meetup goer, well done you. If not, make tonight the night. propertyhub.net/meetups.
And for those who are in London and going along to the launch event in Stratford, I look forward to seeing you there. And we look forward to being back with you next Tuesday for Ask Rob and Rob. And of course, next Thursday for the Property Podcast. So until then, keep winning. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.